this week's episode of Sword Art Online 2, Kirito and Deathgun have their final duel in the desert, and Sinon has a very creepy and close encounter with Deathgun himself, or at least one of the members of the Deathgun crew, the Laughing Coffin guys. This week's episode was great. It was definitely one of the most tense episodes of the entire season, and what I loved about it is it completely caught me by surprise, because when I first started getting into the second season of Sword Art Online, my first thought is, where is the conflict? People aren't stuck in a game anymore. Asana's been saved by Kirito. How are they going to amplify the terror and tension in this season? And Sinon has really made this one of the most memorable seasons. A lot of that has to do with the fact that early on in the series, they went ahead and developed her character so that when something really bad happens at the end, like in this week's episode, you really feel for her. And it is kind of obvious, and I already mentioned this way earlier in the earlier reviews, that I believed that Shinkawa was probably going to be helping out Deathgun. Guess what? He is, and he is one creepy bastard. Definitely one of the most villainous characters that we've seen in the entire series. And that second half of the episode, when compared to the first, was so different in terms of tone. The first half was sort of like adventurous and hopeful. We just beat up Deathgun. We figured out his name was Zaza the Red Eyes. Sinon was able to help out with her weird phantom bullet, which just happens to be the name of this arc, by the way, very clever. And Kirito just cut him in half, he skidded across the desert, and you were exhilarated. This is practically like the end of this arc. But they're not going to let it end so easily. In fact, I do love the scene how they actually both win the game, where Sinon takes out a grenade and places it in Kirito's hands, and then she hugs him, and they both explode, and they technically both win the bullet-to-bullet competitions. But when she finally goes back to the real world, she wakes up, and as you would imagine, she's very wary. She's checking under the bed, in the closet, everywhere, and then she gets a knock at the door, and there he is, Shinkawa, as creepy as ever. And he goes on to say that he was just looking forward to her winning the competition because now that she's done with it, they can be together. And that's when you realize, okay, something's really not right with this guy. He tries to force himself upon Sinon. She pushes him away, and that's when he starts to get forceful, pushing her against the bed, putting his hand up her shirt, and putting the syringe right to her side, which will kill her. This is the part of the episode where things just get really creepy because this dude just goes nuts. His facial expressions go crazy, and he goes on to explain that GGO is like the only reason he has for living. And it not only makes him a very sad but messed up character, but it just amplifies the horror because it shows how far he's willing to go in this scene. And him and Sinon had this like knockdown, drag-out fight, and I was really hoping that it would be Sinon who's the one who would actually end up knocking him out, or at least decking him in the face one good time, because there was this scene where, like, the actual virtual avatar Sinon was talking to Shino to sort of, like, buck her up and get her out of this shit and start fighting back. And then at the very end of the episode, it ends with Kirito busting into the door and kneeing him in the face, and that's where it ends. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Sword Art Online 2? Pretty freaking awesome! I think this is what we've all been waiting for in this arc, is the final battle with Deathgun, which did not disappoint. It featured some great animation. I especially love the scene where Kirito finally figured out what Deathgun's actual name is, and when he was attacking him, there was like a split second where they used this like hand-drawn, exaggerated style, and it just amplified how angry and pissed off he was and how he was just ready to take out Deathgun, and it was oh so satisfying, especially with his body just skidding across the desert. Just, I love that stuff. Other things that were really great about this episode is the second half, because it brought it back to the real world, and it showed us how dangerous things actually are in the real world, and I love that concept, because in the world of GGO, there's just guys with Gatling guns all over the place, and bullets, and danger, and lightsabers, and in the real world, it's just a crazy motherfucker with a syringe who's going to kill you and make you feel really creeped out, and what's really disturbing about that is that can happen in real life. These people exist. There are people who go to obsessive means just to be with a girl they like, and it just really made that character seem all the more disturbing. I mean, there were a lot of clues and signals that Shinkawa was going to be involved with Deathgun, especially early on in the series, especially that part when they finally do start to go into the bullet-to-bullet competitions, and he's just honestly watching with the shadows behind him. So I inevitably knew it was going to get to that, especially when he walked in. It was just, you could feel the tension. It was so fucked up when he's just getting in her face, rubbing her face, and saying he loves her continuously while spit literally explodes from his mouth. He's just a really creepy individual, and this episode just amplified the terror. I really freaking loved it. And like I said, I really would have liked it if Sinon was the one who overpowered him, because in a way it sort of like would show how strong she's actually become. But I'm not gonna lie, when Kirito busted in through that door and kneed him in the face, I literally went, yeah! Hell yeah! That's right! I was really excited to finally see this guy get hurt. And what's really crazy is, I don't know what's gonna happen next. This guy is still dangerous. He could have some of his other Laughing Coffin members nearby any second. They could just bust in and start having this real fight with Kirito. And this is the RL, people. You can die here. So, really great episode. Fantastic production value. A lot of little funny scenes at the end when she threw the grenade. And then it got really, really crazy at the end when Shinkawa busted in and started being creep. This was just a really good episode. I loved it. That's really all I can say about it. And I'm glad the series is not done yet. And I'm really hoping, like, the first season they're going to continue on for a full, like, 24, maybe 26 episodes. I don't know how long they're going to go. Because I want to see more from this series, and maybe a little bit more from GGO. But I'm kind of interested to see if there's going to be another brand new game after this. And I'd like to see the return of Sino and Shino Asura, because she's a great character. Easily, next to Kirito, the most developed character of the series. You could argue that maybe Asuna is, but she was practically absent from the second half of the first season, and even right now, she's not really doing much aside from trying to support Kirito, and that was a really cool scene where both her and Yui had the little computer, and they were basically able to put Kirito's hand on it, and that's kind of what gave him the extra power to take on Death Gun. So, fantastic episode, great production value, lots of action, and tons of creepy tension. I'm giving this week's episode a 5 out of 5. Pretty freaking awesome. Check it out, fans of Sword Art Online. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, make sure and give it a thumbs up, and please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Sword Art Online 2. What did you think of the final battle between Zaza and Kirito? And what did you think of that final scene at the end? Pretty freaking creepy, huh? And what do you want to see from the future of the series? Make sure to go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you have not already. You can do so by clicking on the button right up here. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.